What's happening behind closed doors between Canada and the United States? Are years of cooperation and friendship on the brink of an economic showdown? Quiet meetings, confidential discussions, and a monumental decision are now sending shockwaves through North America. Canada, one of the United States' closest allies, is preparing to strike back in a way that could change the game for the U.S. economy for decades. The trade relationship between these neighboring giants has been a cornerstone of stability. But beneath the surface, a storm has been brewing now. Canada's latest moves could redefine their economic ties, with billions of dollars in trade at stake and ripples that could extend across global markets. This isn't just a simple dispute. It's an economic battle that could reshape industries and futures alike. So, what exactly is Canada planning, and why are U.S. industries bracing for impact? Let's break it all down. The roots of the dispute, the seeds of this economic standoff, were planted years ago, but recent threats of tariffs from Washington have pushed Canada to the edge. Behind closed doors, Canadian officials have been crafting a broad retaliation strategy. This isn't just about steel or aluminum tariffs anymore. Canada is taking things to an entirely new level. The U.S. has imposed or threatened duties on Canadian exports, from timber to agricultural products, under the guise of addressing trade imbalances and protecting domestic industries to Canada. These actions are seen as aggressive, unfair, and an outright threat to its economy and sovereignty. In response, Canada has devised a comprehensive and far-reaching retaliation plan designed to strike at the heart of the U.S. economy. Targeted retaliation, where it hurts the most. Canada's retaliation isn't random, it's carefully calculated. Early reports indicate Canadian officials are considering tariffs on U.S.-made cars, orange juice, and even iconic American products like bourbon. These targets aren't chosen by accident. They're aimed at key industries in swing states like Michigan, Florida, and Kentucky, sending a loud and clear message to U.S. policymakers. Trade disputes come with political consequences. Trade between the U.S. and Canada is enormous. In 2023 alone, the two nations exchanged over $800 billion in goods and services. Canada is the largest export market for U.S. goods, and the U.S. is Canada's largest trading partner. These numbers go beyond economics. They represent millions of jobs, livelihoods, and entire industries. If Canada's plan goes into effect, U.S. exports could face billions of dollars in losses, sending shockwaves through supply chains and local economies. A political and economic gamble for Canada. This isn't just about trade, it's about survival and political leverage. By targeting industries in politically sensitive states, Canada is putting pressure on U.S. lawmakers to reconsider their tariff policies. It's a high-stakes gamble, but for Canada, it's also about standing firm against a larger, more dominant neighbor. Canadian leaders are making it clear that they won't back down, even if it means taking short-term economic risks. The political dimension of this dispute cannot be overstated. Canada's tough stance is widely supported by its citizens, who see the U.S.'s trade threats as a challenge to their national pride. This public backing gives Canadian officials the political capital to take bold actions, even as industries brace for potential fallout. The ripple effects. Industries on edge. Canada's retaliation plan has U.S. industries on high alert. Automakers, for instance, are facing the nightmare scenario. Tariffs on cars could disrupt the tightly integrated supply chains that have been the backbone of North American manufacturing for decades. Farmers are also bracing for impact. Canada is a top buyer of U.S. agricultural products, and retaliatory tariffs on items like corn, soybeans, and orange juice could devastate rural communities, already struggling with rising costs and global competition. Small businesses that rely on cross-border trade aren't immune either. Many of these enterprises depend on the seamless flow of goods between the two nations. If that flow is disrupted, the economic impact could be devastating, particularly for border regions like Michigan, New York, and Washington, where cross-border trade is a lifeline. Canada's leverage, energy, and critical minerals. Canada may be smaller in population and GDP, but it wields significant influence in key sectors like energy and critical minerals. As the largest foreign supplier of oil and gas to the U.S., Canada has the potential to leverage its energy exports as a bargaining chip. Natural gas pipelines, electricity exports, and oil shipments are critical lifelines for many parts of the U.S., especially northern states. While Canada hasn't explicitly threatened to restrict energy exports, Even the possibility could send shockwaves through energy markets, leading to price spikes and shortages. Beyond energy, Canada is also reevaluating its policies on critical minerals like cobalt and nickel, materials essential for batteries, electric vehicles, and renewable energy technologies. If Canada decides to restrict these exports to the U.S. or pivot toward other buyers like China, American industries could face severe disruptions. Such a move wouldn't just affect automakers and tech companies, it could also slow down the U.S.'s transition to clean energy, a critical component of its global competitiveness strategy. The lessons of the past. This isn't the first trade standoff between the U.S. and Canada. Back in 2018, during a similar tariff dispute, Canada imposed retaliatory duties on American steel, aluminum, and other goods. The result, U.S. manufacturers and farmers felt the pain, and public outcry eventually forced a resolution. Canada is now applying the lessons learned from that experience, crafting an even more strategic and far-reaching response. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement USMCA was meant to bring stability to North American trade, but this dispute is testing its limits. If Canada moves forward with its retaliation, it could lead to legal challenges under the USMCA's dispute resolution mechanism, further straining relations and raising questions about the agreement's long-term viability. The global impact. This isn't just a North American issue. Other countries are watching closely, and Canada's response could set a precedent for how smaller nations push back against U.S. trade policies. If Canada's strategy succeeds, it could inspire other countries to take a firmer stance, potentially reshaping the global trade landscape. At the same time, a full-blown trade war between the U.S. and Canada could have ripple effects across global supply chains, commodity prices, and investor confidence. The stakes are high, not just for the two nations involved, but for the global economy as a whole. The road ahead. So far, U.S. officials have downplayed Canada's plans, but behind the scenes, there's growing concern. Retaliatory tariffs could escalate the dispute further, triggering countermeasures and creating a tit-for-tat scenario that neither side can afford. The U.S. knows that it cannot alienate Canada completely. As its largest trading partner, a key ally, Canada is simply too important. The coming weeks will be critical. Canada is finalizing its plans, and the U.S. must decide whether to escalate or back down. This isn't just another trade dispute, it's a defining moment in U.S.-Canada relations. The outcome will have far-reaching consequences, not just for these two nations, but for global markets and industries. Canada's quiet but calculated moves are setting the stage for an economic show down that could reshape the future of trade. In North America, the world is watching, and the stakes couldn't be higher. What happens next will determine the trajectory of one of the most important economic relationships in the world.